Okay, Dave, I asked your mate Steve Jones this as well. I mean, you spend your entire life studying form. If the Daily Mirror went to the wall, racing TV decided they didn't want you anymore, and you fell out with Nick Luck, could you survive just punting?
No, definitely not. I punted for about 10 years, and I punted on sprint 2-year-olds, 5 and 6 furlongs, basically horses that were inexperienced and finished full of running and on the bridle, horses that hadn't had hard races. I did that from about 2004 to 2014, maybe slightly later. I think I had 8 winning years out of 10 and two losing years. The last one was a losing year, and it was the first year of the divisions of the maiden. So that instead of having 16 horses at say Beverley, you might have 2 10s, which with the non-runners then became 2 8s. And the rhythm of the race was different. My stock in trade was a horse at Windsor who was badly drawn, got buried at the back, not in a Machiavellian sense, but it was just inexperienced, and then it would come through and finish about 6th or 7th, and you'd think that was lovely. Not everyone was onto it. If you take that horse and then next time it runs against a highly touted newcomer, the best phrase in the horse racing language, you could back that. It was something that worked very well. But when you had 2 8s instead of 1 16, the rhythm of the races was very different. I lost that year. I had, I think it was, I think I had 500 quid to win on the horse that was beaten a nose in the Albany. I got it all on at 20s, and it's beaten a short head, I think it was. Brave Anna was the Aidan O'Brien horse who won the race, and that was the tin hat on it for me, really. I was in a relationship at the time. When I started, I was single. I'm not in a relationship now, but when I was seeing my girlfriend and I'd had a bad day punting, I just found it very, very hard to do. I must admit, just when we got to Cheltenham, I used to count down the days until the Brocklesby, but I stopped doing that, and I thought I definitely couldn't punt. I think it's I think it's the sternest test of anyone's mind.
Okay, and there's more to Dave Yates in this racing. Opera.
Yeah. I'm an amateur opera singer. I've been doing that. Again, I mentioned earlier that my brother's a professional musician. 2 of my 3 brothers are musicians. I played the violin to grade 8. I started singing. I do sort of amateur stuff round London, really, which is great. I think horse racing is fantastic and music is fantastic. They both attract quite obsessive people who love their horse racing, who love their opera, and I think that they complement each other very well. Horse racing people can be often quite right of centre politically. Artistic people can be quite left of centre politically and a bit more delicate flowers. And I love spending my time between the two. It's something that's it's a great release from the horses.
Okay, then you're on TV a lot, and one of the things you're known for, your cravats. Now, where did that come from? It's quite an unusual.
Yeah, it is an unusual story. It's about early 2000s. I took a mate to Sussex States Day. I only used to go to Goodwood one day a year, most of the time. And I'm very happy to go every day now. But yeah, I picked my mate up, and he had a suit on. You know, it was during that time when through Roman Abramovich and all that, it no longer became essential for businessmen to wear a tie. You know, so yeah, my mate said he had a suit on. I said, he said, do I need to wear a tie? I said, no, you'll be fine. I didn't have a tie. Got to Goodwood, guy wouldn't let us in, and so my mate said, I'll buy a tie from the shop. And I thought, I'm not going to put 60 quid into Lord March's bank account for some silk tie that's got a load of horses' hooves on it. So the previous night, I'd done a singing job where I played a shambling drunk, actually, didn't spend too much time in makeup. And I said to the guy, can I wear a cravat? And he said, yes, of course, John Magner wears a cravat. So I put that on. And if you've got a fat neck, it's quite nice to wear shirts where the top button is undone. So so I think it pissed Claude Duval a bit off. I think because he thought I was an oik who shouldn't be wearing a cravat. So that made it all the sweeter, really.
Talking about sweetness, one of the things I've seen you tweet about in the past is sort of a campaign against refined sugar.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, I'm overweight, and when I've done cycle rides, I've been quite fit at the end of them. But yeah, that's something. I think that the food industry's got it's got British politics, it's got American politics by the balls, really. And I think that if you work from home and you can buy your own food and cook it yourself, as I can most of the time, like today, I can put some veg and fish in the oven. That's fine. The moment you leave your house, you are in the hands of the food industry. You will eat processed fats, processed sugars, and that's something. I was almost like, one of my mates a few years ago said, I was like some sort of hate preacher. Everywhere I went, I was banging on about processed sugar. But I do think it's very important. And, again, I don't like Boris Johnson. And I think that a U-turn on the sugar industry, which I think he's either in the process of performing or has completed now, is bad for the population.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned Boris Johnson, because him and his sort of mates, I would imagine, would be top customers of your other venture, which is silk top hats.
Yeah, that's a good link. Would
you flog Boris a top hat?
I don't know. I think I'd try and rip him off, probably, if I could sell him a dodgy one. Well, it's it's sort of, I bought my own one from Germany a couple of years ago, and it was beautiful. And I used to wear those I got a clunky felt one from Mossbros next door, and it's a sideline that I love. This is one that I bought. I think this came from Germany. You have to my head. If I look there, the hat looks at 11 o'clock because I've got a funny shaped head. But I've got about 50 of them now. It's a sideline. Silktoppers.com is my website, which I need to work on Twitter and Insta, as young people call it, and try and do that. But yeah, it's something that the guy who does lots of refurb work for the London shops lives in Peckham, and so I'm mates with him, and he does that. So yeah, it's a really enjoyable sideline. I buy them from the UK, from Ireland, France and Germany normally, sometimes further afield, but that's about it. But they're great. They're lovely things, and they've got a great history. Most of them they stopped making them in the 60s, so most of the hats you buy are about 100 years old. I'm
quite surprised, because I always assumed that top hats were an English thing. I didn't realise they were.
All the silk was made in France, whether they come from Germany or the UK or from France. All the mills were in France. The last one was smashed up in the 60s. Yeah.
Okay, now you've been involved in what some of your friends have described to me as a labour of love recently. Something that's hopefully will be out by the time most people see this, about Fred Archer. Yeah,
I hope it'll be finished in the next few weeks, really, for Racing TV. I went to them and asked if we could do historical documentaries. That's something, I think that's one of racing's incredible selling points. I love reading about Archer. His life, his tragic life, is absolutely fascinating. And his great grandson Alex Tozzetti is trying to put together a film about Archer's life, and I think that's has been a labour of love. It's quite a long labour of love. We've been almost 2 years in the making of it. We've done some amazing things. I hope that people find it interesting. I hope we can do more. Things like the 1913 Derby, the Suffragette Derby, an incredible event in British history, not just like racing history, on a more sort of horse racing theme. The American jockeys who came over at the end of the 19th century and just revolutionised race riding, epitomised by Todd Sloan, riding shorter. And once they blew in and they blew out in the space of about a decade, perhaps slightly more in some cases, many of them left in disgrace because they brought punters and dopers who knew what they were doing in America. And their story is incredible. There are so many more. I mean, obviously, that the Grand National has an incredible history and other aspects of British racing. But yeah, that's something that really, if I could do those full time, I think I probably would, because I think they're absolutely, I think they're riveting things to do. Archer's life was just, it really could make a feature film without any need for sort of stretching the truth, because it was a remarkable life.
So what particularly fascinated you and drew you to him?
I think when I was about 18 or 19, I went to the old site of the Horse Racing Museum. I think it's maybe
In the High Street?
Yeah, it was about, I think it was the day that Doyoun won the Craven Stakes, I think. What's that, 88, I think? Might be 87. No, 88. And, I saw Fred Archer's gun, and I thought, it really struck me. When it's like just 18 inches in front of you, like the instrument with which one of the world's most famous sportsmen ended his own life at 29. So it's always been a fascination. I mean, I'm 51 now, so that was 33 odd years ago, and it stayed with me ever since. And so I'm very pleased to be able to do this for racing TV, which I know that sounds like a terrible sort of corporate line, but it is a labour of love. I mean, I think it's those when you think about British horse racing, you think about Wimbledon 1882, something like that. First Cup finals 1880s, Eton versus the Engineers or something. The first rugby internationals in the 1880s. The Derby had been run for 100 years by the time that those sports were in their infancy, obviously helped by the growth of rail travel. Racing's got an incredible sort of tapestry to look at, hasn't it? And all over not just here. Like the stories of American horses and American jockeys are fascinating. I think it's something that we should tap into a bit more. Sadly, of course, it doesn't bring betting revenue with it, and so I know that it's not. It's less easy to sell from a financial point of view, but from my perspective, I absolutely love it.
And so finally, racing's got a very rich history. Has it got a very rich future?
I don't see why it shouldn't have. I think that I would love to see more people involved in horse racing at the top end. It's very, very hard to sell the Derby to a sports editor, say 2019, 7 of the 12 owned by Coolmore, the other 5, maybe a couple of oil sheikhs in there, people basically who aren't accessible to the media. I'd like to see that change. I don't think it's going to, but I'm reasonably optimistic about racing's future. I think it needs to be on the front foot with regard to welfare, and I think it can be on the front foot with regard to welfare. We know that injuries and deaths occur in a race where horses are asked to extend themselves. James Willoughby, who's a really good friend of mine, always asks the question, is racing fair on the horse? I always have a very similar question, which is the life of the average thoroughbred worth living? I think that it is, and therefore I think that racing is defensible ethically, and I hope it's got a bright future.
Brilliant. Dave Yates, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon.